Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to come to your meeting. It's an honor to speak with other Amnesty activists around the world and those that are interested in the Banned Book Week programming. My name is Ed McKinnon. I am a librarian at Glendale Community College in Arizona. I am also a part of the Amnesty International Banned Book Week Working Group that gets together each year to formulate what Amnesty International USA is going to do regarding Banned Book Weeks. And so it's been a formal group for about 3 or 4 years now. Prior to that, it was under different iterations. But I'm here to really answer your questions and talk a little bit about banned books. But if you are okay with it, I'll start with a little bit of a dramatic introduction telling the story of one case, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
And then I'll take some questions and we'll see where we go from there. Can I share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let's see if I really can. So now, of course, I don't see you, which I always find a little bit frustrating. Let me see. Here we go. Okay, I think I've got you guys back that I can see. So as my screen says, if you do have questions or thoughts, particularly about Banned Book Week, I'm a librarian and an Amnesty person.
We can't hear you. What's happened?
Next stop, Woodcrest Station, with access to the Camden County One-Stop Career Center.
We can hear Donna, but we can't hear Ed. We lost him.
I lost him. Yeah, I'm gonna go and come back because I'm on the train. Okay, and I'm gonna get off soon.
Okay.
I'll come back.
So let's see if Ed comes back too. Yeah, he vanished. Record.
So yeah, picking up maybe where I left off or repeating a little bit, I'm Ed McKinnon and I'm a librarian and I work with the Amnesty International Banned Book Week Working Group. And so I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys might have about Banned Book Weeks, either from a librarian perspective or from the working group perspective, Amnesty International perspective. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. This is when it all fell apart before, but we'll see if this goes okay. And somehow I don't have the chat open either. So if there are things in the chat, someone might have to interrupt me. Let me see. Let me do one more thing before let me open that chat window up so I can see and now share the screen. Yeah, so now I can see you guys in the chat. So as I was saying, if you do have questions, please put questions or thought in the chat. And what I wanted to do was start off with a little bit of a dramatic telling of one of the cases. While I do that, I'm actually going to show the political cartoons of one of this year's Amnesty International cases, and that's Ahmad Kabir Kishore. And so I'm actually, his photos are available on a Facebook page, but I'm going to run a little slideshow, which I think will you'll be able to see as I go through. Unfortunately, I don't have any of these translated, but you'll get some of his images. My name is Ahmed Kabir Kishore. I like to draw and I like to observe life in my drawings. I have made drawings a profession of mine. During the pandemic, I created a Facebook journal called Life in the Time of Corona. My journal pondered life in the pandemic. It criticized the government response. It showed a hopeful Mother Earth stitching the clothes of different countries, healing the world. I alluded to my government's corruption and showed daily life. I satirized powerful people. My captors, my torturers, asked me about every woman in my cartoons. Are they the prime minister? About every man, are they the father of the nation? In my country, you can face life in prison for publishing false information and propaganda against the father of the nation. Apparently, too, you can face a long prison term for criticizing the prime minister or other powerful people. I was tortured during the interrogations. Every time they were not pleased with an answer, they hit me on my legs, ankles, and soles of my feet. They hit me on both sides of my head at the same time, causing my ear to bleed and my eardrum to burst. I was held for 10 months without charge. Then I was abruptly released when my journalist friend died in custody. It is because he died that I am free. I did not want freedom like this. We were supposed to get out together to go see Mount Everest. I faced 10 years in prison and heavy fines. Thousands of others face sanction for what they have posted online. I've heard of a high school kid who reposted a meme for likes and spent 2 weeks in jail and just had formal charges filed against him for his Facebook post. I am a cartoonist. I have been drawing political cartoons for many years. Criticizing the government does not mean I'm anti-national. Who will explain this to these people? They understand nothing about cartoons. I am an award-winning cartoonist. I tell stories of life. I dare to critique the powerful. If you come too close, you will smell the pus.
Ooh.
So what is that? That's one of the 6 cases that's on the Amnesty International Banned Book Week website.
Okay.
And at the college where I'm at, and in Arizona, we started doing this quite a few years ago. We started to write our own first-person narratives of the cases. And so what you just heard was my first-person narrative of the facts of his case. And if you were to look at this sheet, you would see where I got that information from. Most of it was from an Amnesty site. One was from a news article from the Daily Star, which I believe is a Bangladeshi English language paper. Some was from Reporters Without Borders, and another from an Amnesty International report. Some of what I read were quotes from him, direct quotes. I didn't embellish very much. I just sort of strung it together. I find it really compelling to write the first person narratives because we get to know the cases better. And I mean, I don't know if that was you, Susanna, that said sort of breathed afterwards. Whew. I find we get that reaction from the audience when we read them. And so my students write them now. It's just that we're doing our event next week, so they're not written yet. So I did this one last night. So they're not all written yet. But the ones from years past have been very compelling. And we do a banned book reading in cooperation with the library that I work at. And we do it outside on the lawn in Arizona because it's usually nice at this time of year. And the students will read their first person narratives during the reading and then talk a little bit about the cases. And then we ask that people that are in the audience take a moment to go to the website and sign the online petition, or they can we have physical petitions printed out at the table, the Amnesty table, that they can sign. And all of this, not the first person narratives, but all of this is on the Amnesty International website. And so this year, Amnesty likes to say the American Library Association focuses on books that are challenged throughout the United States, and Amnesty International focuses on people the people who feel the very real effects of censorship in authoritarian governments. And so Ahmed Kashour's cartoons, most of which are still available online to see, haven't been technically banned, but in a sense, he's been banned. And then how much are people not actually creating because they know that in Bangladesh, under the Digital Securities Act, you can find yourself facing really life in prison, but most of the cases are less than that, but 10 years in prison, spending time in jail. They have indefinite detention for some of these violations under Digital Securities Act. So how much speech does that squelch when you know that those are the repercussions for what you might write when you're criticizing those that are powerful? The other cases this year are Jimmy Lai, a publisher from Apple Daily in Hong Kong. Each one of these, let me go to the actual website. I didn't put it there. So
Yeah, Jimmy Lai, there's been a lot has been written about him. That is, yeah, it's just closing down the only voice, the only dissenting voice in Hong Kong.
Yeah, one of the few or only pro-democratic news outlets in Hong Kong.
The only, yes.
And so yeah, you all may know more about some of these things than I do, but if you wanted to go to the website, and I can share the website in the chat in just a moment. Of course, you could just Google Banned Book Week Amnesty International and you should get it. For each of the 6 cases, there's a bit of information, and then you can click on the Take Action link, and there's more information. And then, of course, it's a typical Amnesty International action form. But Jimmy Lai is a publisher in Hong Kong. He's facing, I think he's in jail right now and is facing some 20 months in prison. And of course, his Apple Daily has been shut down. Golrah Iray is a fiction writer from Iran, and she her story, she actually wrote a story that was inspired by a film that was released 10 years ago or so about stoning in Iran. And she was so moved by it that she wrote this fictional story. But in the fictional story, she has her protagonist burn a copy of the Quran. And so when they found her fictional story, which was unreleased on her computer, it resulted in pretty serious charges. And she's been in jail, really since 2015. Jafar is a journalist in Nigeria, and he was forced to flee after posting online videos showing, as it says there, the governor receiving bribes from contractors. But doing just journalistic work, he had to leave the country for the safety of his family. The courts finally agreed that he was not going to face criminal charges for those allegations, or for whatever allegations the government was making against him. And so he returned to the country and then was quickly charged civilly for the what he's posted online. So Amnesty is calling for a remedy for him. Elena, from a journalist from Russia, she's a fascinating investigative journalist, and she actually wrote a lot about the gay men in Chechnya, which drew the ire of many in power, or many favoring sort of a status quo. And she found herself beaten up, death threats against her, death threats from government officials and so forth. And then finally, Anaf Jazim is a poet from Sri Lanka. He's also a teacher, and it's said that his poetry was extremist poetry, and that he was using it in his school to create young radicals. I think is kind of what the gist of what what was going down in his case. Amnesty International believes that, in fact, it's sort of an anti-Muslim sentiment in Sri Lanka, which is not a majority Muslim country. I'm not an expert in Sri Lanka. That's my understanding, that the Muslims are targeted for their beliefs. So there's more detail there. The neat thing about Jazim's case is you can actually look at his poetry too. And you can look him up in other places like Pen America and so forth, but Sri Lankan authorities have continued to argue that the contents of this poetry anthology are extremism, but this has been flatly rejected by the author and his legal representatives. And apparently a renowned Tamil language professor also contested that the authorities' interpretations of his poetry, stating that there are several poems against extremism, violence, and war in this collection. So it's nice when, when we're doing work on amnesty cases, when you can actually also see the works and words of the people that we're campaigning for. And there's been quite a few interviews with, there's been a few interviews with Ahmed Kabir Kishore, which you can look up online too. And that's where I got some of my information for that first person narrative. So, I mean, that's the short version, I guess, of these cases. And what Amnesty is asking us to do is to promote these cases and take action. Down below, there was a live online event, which you can now watch, that's been recorded. Both last year's and this year's event are available online. And we had a couple of folks from the library associations. So the director of the Office of Intellectual Freedom for the American Library Association, as well as a representative from IFLA, which is an International Federated Library Association. They joined us for the discussion, as well as two journalists from Central America, including one cartoonist who showed a bit of his work and talked about the oppression that he's suffering in El Salvador, and I think Nicaragua were the two countries. And then there's other things on the website that are useful, maybe not for this year, although we have till October 31st that Amnesty is asking people to take action through October 31st. But keeping in mind for next year that there's many other resources. You can request free bookmarks that Amnesty will send to you, or you can print them out. They are available for printing out, but you could actually request them, and Amnesty will send them to you for free, and then you can distribute them to your bookstores, local bookstores, and so forth. There's social media graphics and so forth. So if you go into the graphics and video and you put this on the right view, let's see if I can do that. There are different placards you can put up for social media, but also each one of the cases has a little video associated with it that you can share on social media or look at as a group. So those are available as well. Victories, and then last year's information. There's also a book list of books written by people that have been prior amnesty cases that's available. You can bring that to your public libraries and say, hey, can you have these on display next year? You know, or you can ask your bookstores to make those things available in their Banned Book Week displays. Probably one of the things that is worth showing is in the toolkits, they have case sheets like this that work really well in a display if you were going to do this out in public somewhere, because it's just a brief information about the case. And then it has one of those QR codes and a shortened link where people could actually go directly online and take action. I think I'll stop with the amnesty stuff for there. I have about 2 words to say about the American Library Association effort too, but I thought I'd stop and take questions in case folks have any.
Wow, it's yeah, it must have been hard picking 6. I mean, it seems to me that a lot of people are in jail because of what they've written.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because there are probably 2 or 3 of us in the Banned Book Week working group that want to have 10 to 15 cases. And I think it's fair to say that the Amnesty staff wants to keep it a little more narrow. And so I'm a volunteer, right? I'm a volunteer on the working group. And so is my colleague, Ken Mayers. And he's a former middle school teacher that has been doing Banned Book Week forever with his kids and so forth. And for those that just joined, again, I teach at a college, or I'm a librarian at a college. I used to teach high school too. But yeah, it is really hard to pick the cases. And what we do is we have a set of, we have a matrix that we create at the beginning of the process, where we look into all the amnesty cases that are out there that seem to have a publication component to them. And we start this in about April. And usually we put together a list of about 30 or so cases that are out there. And then those are cases that are already vetted by Amnesty. We've tried to do cases that were not vetted by Amnesty, but were vetted by other agencies that we respect, like Penn or Reporters Without Borders, to get a certain mix of cases. But as this has become more of an official event from Amnesty, Amnesty has to vet everything. So a lot of what we do has to get sent off to the IS for approval, especially anything around the cases and the language of the cases. So I wish I had the notes in front of me, but basically there's an array of things that we're considering. We're trying to get geographic diversity. So folks from, all the continents. We try to get someone from the Western world. Last year, we had someone from the United States. So we try to get someone from the United States, Canada, or Europe in there. At least I'd like it every year, but it doesn't always happen. We try to get a mix of types of writers. So we'd like to have someone who's actually published a book every year, because that would appeal to the libraries and bookstores to bring them in on this. But I find good ones every year, but they're not Amnesty vetted cases, so we can't always move on those. And like I said, those are some that I've tried to get done in the past. But we try to have a mix. We try, like this time we had a poet, a couple journalists, and someone who had a visual art. So each year we try to have someone who has a visual art. Last year we had a photojournalist from India. We try to make sure religion is represented fairly, especially in the United States with the anti-Muslim sentiment. So we want to make sure that some of our cases are sort of pro-Muslim, in a sense. So some balance there. Last year we had someone from Vietnam who was a Catholic, wrote pro-Catholic writings, and he was also an environmentalist, and he found himself in prison because of his writings. We do try to hit on the key areas that Amnesty is interested in, or also things that connect well with student groups or local groups and organizations. So we do try to find a case with an LGBT connection. We do try to find environmentally oriented cases. So there's an array of things that we're looking for. And unfortunately, we have to boil it down to 6. That's really what they wanted to get it down to this year, mostly because of capacity, I think. And then I think there's I'm an educator, so I'm thinking about how does this connect with my college and my students on this campus, and what different constituent groups can we connect with, and can we get like our Indigenous group on campus if we have something that reflects Indigenous interests and artistic, et cetera, all of those sorts of things. And so I want the net to be very wide. Amnesty is, their prime motivation is efficient and effective activism. And so I think that they feel that if we have too many cases, it dilutes the impact on any one case. If we focus on 6, we can have greater impact on each one of those 6 than if we focus on 15. And you know, it's not wrong. It's just, I'm not saying it's right or wrong either way. There's just different aspects of it, and that's one of the neat things about the group is we bring these different perspectives into the group as we do this planning each year.
Yeah, well, as I said, the only one I'd heard of was Jimmy Lai, and I mean, essentially, when you're advocating for him to be released, you're attacking the government of China,
Right.
Which is big.
Right.
They don't like being attacked.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And you know, there's an Amnesty International group in Hong Kong.
Is there? Oh,
There is.
dear.
There is.
Oh, dear.
And apparently the Banned Book Week from last year, although I don't recall if we had a China case last year. I think we did. I think we had a Uyghur case last year.
Okay.
There was and one of my colleagues from the working group knows more about this than I do, but there was a international school in Shanghai that did something for Banned Book Week and layered in some amnesty materials in Shanghai. So, you know, those people are putting a lot more on the line than I am when I'm sitting here and, you know, raising awareness about these cases on our campus, you know.
Now, how effective has it been, this campaign, in past years?
So I think historically, going back, so it restarted as a formal program about 3 years ago. The program has been that Amnesty joined in with the American Library Association, started in the 90s, and it was mostly spearheaded by a volunteer coordinator in Maine called Thessel Moreland. I don't know if any of you know her or not. She apparently was fairly well known. Unfortunately, about 10 years ago, she passed away, and Amnesty stopped doing it because she was the one that did it. Okay. And what we found, or what I found over time, was there were probably a few dozen of us folks in academia or in schools that continued to do it anyway, right? We just did it on our own with amnesty cases. And over time, we met people at conferences that were doing this. And I had a pretty good connection with the Western Regional Office, and it became sort of a semi-formal thing through the Western Regional Office for a couple of years. And then about 3 years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, Amnesty USA decided they were going to do it again, right? And so there were enough staff at AIUSA, and I think they just added it to their regular work, honestly. And so they decided we were going to do it and make it a signature event again. And that's made it harder because everything has to be vetted and all the T's have to be crossed and I's dotted and all that kind of stuff. But it is becoming a bigger event each year. I would say each year we can see that more people are getting involved, but I don't know that as straight up activism, it's having a huge impact yet. I think 10 years ago when Thessel Moreland was doing it, it was having a bigger impact. You know, not as big as Right for Rights, but kind of like it was something that groups did. But I think that the team would like, you know, the folks at Amnesty International would like to see this grow and become a much greater impact. And, you know, part of it is we have to get our materials posted up online earlier and meet with groups like you that would be interested in learning about it. And then you guys would hopefully go to your bookstores or libraries and say, hey, help us with this, or let's partner with this, you know.
Oh, this is great. I hadn't heard of it before, and I'm wondering, have I not read some of the letters from Amnesty? This is really terrific.
Well, like I said, it was a little bit rogue for a while, you know. I mean, you know, but back in the day, it used to make it on Amnesty's homepage, and now we're not on the homepage, but we have a pretty good web presence again. So.
Well, you know, I mean, in Philadelphia, I mean, didn't we start the Didn't
The
we
country?
start the revolution by writing banned books? I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
Ben Franklin happily writing treason.
yeah. Thomas Paine.
All
You
of
know,
them.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm very interested. I volunteer for some small library things. So I'm always very interested in books. And we've gone away from books. I sort of wish the last 20 years hadn't really happened. We could all be reading books.
One of the goals to in terms of amnesty to advocate for the release of the people that are in prison.
Yeah, so for each of those 6 cases, I think 4 of them actually have people that are in prison or facing charges. One of them's out on bail and facing charges. It is to get them released from prison. In the Bangladesh and some of the other cases, but for I think Sri Lanka too, Bangladesh and Sri Lanka have very severe Digital Securities Act type things, where with long pretrial detention allowed. So in Sri Lanka, I think it's 18 months. You can be arrested and put in jail for 18 months, awaiting trial. No, awaiting charges, right? Like
Waiting charges.
awaiting charges, And I think it's 12 months in Bangladesh.
Kind of like poor people in America.
Yeah, I mean,
Like poor people in America.
I mean,
I keep thinking of America the whole time you're speaking about. I have 2 things in my mind. I know very little, but I was reading about when you keep mentioning Hong Kong, the national security law.
Right.
I wonder if anybody's been in prison because you cannot oppose the government. And I read a little bit about that. My other thought is when I watch things about I always go back to Guantanamo Bay, and I think of the movie I saw, The Report on Amazon, and how they fought in our country not to get these reports out to the American people. I think, are we really we don't imprison people? Well, we do there. And again, with everything, do we really learn the truth? Susanna knows how I think. It's like the looming tower. Like every year I see 9/11, think, how could this have happened? And why didn't we hear more, of course, about why it happened? If there are books written, I'll bet you we never see some of them,
Right.
and
Right.
that people are fighting to keep those reports. I mean, I think it was Diane Feinberg who was he had to beg her to let that report about Guantanamo Bay
Right.
out, because they wanted to suppress it in the worst way, that we do the exact same things that we are accusing these people of doing. So, and I have other thoughts too. My ADHD is in full bloom right now. As an educator, are we doing anything here in this country? Are there books written? There's a big push to teach Indigenous history and the true African American history, and look at the counties that are fighting it: Montgomery County, Bucks County. And there's actual wars in the school boards between that. So I wonder if we'll ever get to, in this country, of coming to battle with these people who don't want our true history taught in the schools. I'm sure you deal with that all the time. Where do you teach?
Yeah, I'm at Glendale Community College in Arizona, so just outside of Phoenix.
Arizona. Funny
Yeah.
you should bring up Arizona on this day.
Yes, I know.
What is your girl doing?
Susanna,
what is she doing to us?
I don't even know. I called her. She wouldn't take my call, but I did call her. I tried to call her again last night, and her message was full. But
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I'm not either. She's got to do the right thing sooner or later. But yeah, it's a mess. The 2 things that what you said made me think of. The Guantanamo Bay thing is interesting because every year I talk to students about this, both informally when we do our banned book reading, which is mostly a club event, but then we have a banned books and censorship class, and I go and I speak that class each year, and I tell them about American Library Association things and the Amnesty things, and talk censorship in general. And one of the books I used to talk about quite a bit was Poems from Guantanamo, which was a book of poetry that was published in the United States that was written by the prisoners there. And it took a long time for those poems to be able to be published. That it was fought all the way. There were lawsuits that had to be, the case had to be made that their writing could be permitted. They were translated by military translators, not literary translators. They had to, you know, they were all these layers of security in and trying to stop the poems from getting out.
Right.
And so we would talk about this in the class, and it would be lots of fun to talk about, you know, why wouldn't the United States want these poems written? Why wouldn't
Like
they want them published?
like the Mauritanian, like the,
Right.
like exactly what they, you know, you're right, right.
So,
Military.
and so on the band there, on that webpage, there is a list of books related to, I'm pretty sure there's Poems from Guantanamo on there. I can't remember if it is now, because that wasn't written by someone.
I would love to read that.
But it's a short book of poetry, and it's fascinating. And for a while, I had students read from it every year because they found it very interesting. And then over time, there was less interest. In the first years when I taught after 9/11, the majority of students in the class were like, yeah, the United States should keep that stuff quiet because we're under attack. And then slowly but surely over time, it was about 50-50. People were like, well, why would you not want them? That voice should get out. And then 10 years after the fact, people were like, most people are like, well, I could see why they wanted to keep it quiet, but they shouldn't. They should let that stuff out. And so it was interesting to see that change over time. The other thing that I did want to say, and I'll share my screen quickly again, because you said about teaching and so forth. Let's see. I have just two slides that are the American Library Association's top 10 challenge books. This is 2019, and you can Google this online and you can get these lists. They're out there all over the place, but ALA, or American Library Association. I'm going to show 2 years, 2019 and 2020. So in 2019, George is about a transgender kid. Beyond Magenta is about transgender teens. Sex is a Funny Word is a nonfiction book, but it includes LGBT content. Prince in the Night, I don't know that one, but it's described as LGBT content. I Am Jazz is about the transgender young person. And then drama, Handmaid's Tale, you guys may know, but it's not LGBT, but it's gender issues and women's rights and
it's pretty shocking.
Yes. And then drama, which has LGBT content. And then Tango Makes Three is this great story. If you don't know it, it's a fun kids book about a true story about two male penguins that adopt a baby penguin that was going to be abandoned, and they raise it at the Bronx Zoo. And so it's a true story. So you can see last year, it was all about LGBT, particularly transgender. If you would have gone 5 years before that, it would have been dominated by just LG, so lesbian and gay, just homosexuality in general. But as our society evolves, and first lesbian and gay was a problem, homosexuality in general, and then that became more accepted. Then it was about gay marriage, so that's when you had And Tango Makes Three and Heather Has Two Mommies and those sorts of things. And then it was like the transgender stuff. Well, what's really interesting is what happened this year. And George is still on the top about the transgender young person, but stamped anti-racism, racism, anti-racism.
Oh my gosh.
All American Boys about is thought to be anti-police. Something happened in our town, a child story about
To
racial
Kill a
injustice.
Mockingbird? Oh my God.
So
What?
yes, yes,
What?
and I'll circle back to that one in a minute. But and The Hate You Give, which is this
The
great,
hate you give?
which is a great teen book about challenges of growing up in gang areas where the police are, that whole Black Lives Matter.
That taught my granddaughter, who's now 14, about racism.
Yeah,
The book and the movie.
The Hate
Wow.
You Give. Yeah.
Yes.
So it was actually challenged by a police department, I think, in the Carolinas.
I'm not surprised.
In the
yeah.
Carolinas, who said that the book was essentially indoctrinating people to hate the police.
Oh, The Bluest Eye too.
And Mice and Men.
Toni Morrison.
So To Kill a Mockingbird and Bluest
Oh.
Eye and Of Mice and Men, they often make
Of Mice and Men.
yeah.
Classics. This actually was on the reading lists of people you
Of Mice and Men. Why?
So it
It's about
varies.
humanitarianism.
I mean, a lot of times they'll key on something that's about. I mean, like for instance, Huckleberry Finn gets challenged now because
Yeah.
of the N-word, right?
The N-word.
So it varies where they're at, but taken together, a lot of these are really about the Black Lives Matter movement in a sense.
Yeah.
And then
Mhm.
if you take one step beyond that, they're about the lives of people of color. So even To Kill a Mockingbird and The Bluest Eye, I mean, The Bluest Eye is challenged because
Right.
in high schools because there is child sexual abuse in there. And so the reasons for the challenge may be something about like, it's sexually explicit and depicts child sexual abuse. But the effect is that if you look at these, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the 10 reflect the lives of people of color, including Indigenous people in Sherman Alexi's part-time diary of a true diary of a part-time Indian. And then the other one is LGBT, and then the other one is women's viewpoint, in a sense, the Laurie Anderson book. So anyway, I thought that you were talking about what is allowed to be taught in schools and where that, you brought up how, how do teachers even teach this sort of stuff? Well, I think it's gotten harder for teachers to safely teach without being harassed some of the anti-racist or pro people of color messages and so forth. So.
Right.
Yeah, I read this week that in Texas is the biggest school district in the nation, and they have they buy the most books. So I'm not sure whether there's a central body or what it is, but somehow the Texas School Board dictates to publishers what should be printed. So I mean, there's a cycle,
right?
And I mean, remember all that ridiculous nonsense about critical race theory,
right?
It's like, I mean, goodness gracious.
Yeah.
And in a way,
it makes me think of voting rights. Not to interrupt you, they're not going to come out and say that we don't want the people of color standing in line. We can't give them snacks because they're people of color. We don't want poor people having any social worker driving their ballots to the voting ballot. We want to do away. They're not going to come out and say we don't want Black people to vote. But if you look at our history, and that's the thing, when you study history, I remember raising my hand in Camden County College because I went to school as an adult, returning and saying, well, do you think that this is why they won't pass, they didn't want to pass the antitrust law because Rockefeller was in Congress. I actually asked that years ago. Like, you don't get it. My granddaughter learned what she learned from me. They are not learning. They're not learning these things. They don't learn about the voting history of the United States and how they had to count jelly beans in order to vote. They don't learn that. So, and they don't know in the South. Oh, God. I get physically ill when I think about the number of states that are still ignorant
Right.
of everything.
It looks like Ken Mayers, my colleague from the Banned Book Week Working Group, is joining us. So I know we were probably getting close on things, but it's great to see a fellow teacher joining us. I do want to say, as Ken joins us, I'm going to put my email address in the chat, and if you guys wanted to send me a group email, I'd be happy to make sure that you are aware of this next year when we get our information together. And if you have follow-up questions on any of this, I'm happy to.
Can I ask a couple of questions?
Absolutely.
You hear me? Okay. Now back to Amnesty. I think Amnesty is not working on gender issues within the United States. So, and so I'm more interested in these political cases, which is an Amnesty mandate. And so I was wondering, how do you screen these political cases for meeting Amnesty requirements to be kind of adopted as a case to work on? I mean, you want us to work on these cases, and so that brings me to our mandate and what we have to do.
So, Ed, do you want me to answer that question?
I was going to say I was going to say Ken can probably answer this better. I will simply say for the Banned Book Week cases, we only selected cases that were already part of Amnesty's work. But
okay.
Ken can tell you how Amnesty does that. So I'm glad you're on the phone for that one, Ken, because that's beyond my experience.
Yeah, so I mean, there's an easy route to this, which is to pick something up that is already a case that we're working on. Typically, they come in as urgent action cases, but they usually have to be a longer term case than just an urgent action. So my role in this is to consult with the country specialist who is the expert on that case. And then they have a conversation with the International Secretariat to make sure that the case is still going to be open and that the parameters of what they're asking on that case are still clear, so that by the time we get to Banned Books Week in September, everything is up to date. We also have to work closely with active participation of the families and human rights defenders involved in the cases to make sure that that they're in the loop and that they give permission for various things. So even with existing cases, there's additional vetting with the International Secretariat, which is handled largely by the country specialists under the guidance of Andrew Fandino. But there are some cases where it hasn't yet become a case where there's something that clearly matches the Banned Books Week profile and seems to be a priority that hasn't yet made it into the International Secretariat's list of cases. And so in that case, the country specialist works with everybody to actually initiate the case. But there's nothing that we do in Banned Books Week with the Amnesty cases that aren't actually coming from the IS.
So if it's already an urgent action case, then why is Banned Book books adding to that. So what can we do, what we don't already do for urgent action cases? For example, today, I haven't found it, but Jessica, one of our active members, she said she sent to the group a couple of urgent action cases to work on, and I couldn't find it. So she said she sent it to the group, but anyway, that's sidetracked.
Okay, so, well, I mean, a simple answer to your question in some cases would be that it is no different. The urgent action work is just being amplified by being given the attention of Banned Books Week. But in most cases, the urgent action came from earlier in the year. And since then, the case is no longer an urgent action case, but it's not closed. And so everything on Banned Books Week is updated. So in many cases, you have an urgent action, which
We're losing him.
Can't hear
He's
you.
going under a tunnel.
Yeah.
Network bandwidth is low. Okay.
If he comes back, I'll let him speak. But I think what he was going to say is it is a way to amplify what has been done with an urgent action and to revisit those cases. Much like Right for Rights is a way to market activism, right? And all they're doing is picking 10 cases.
Right.
But it's a way for many more people to become involved.
Yes.
And then hopefully some of those people that are involved in that go on
And the
to
Banned
support
Book-
others.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good thing. Yes, exactly. You need to put the
Yeah.
spotlight on
Yeah,
people.
I'm sorry about this tunnel stuff. I've had a lot of obstacles to navigate tonight.
Where
I-
are you? Where
I
are you?
I'm en route from Hoboken to Hawthorne, New Jersey.
Yeah, I saw New Jersey Transit. I'm in New Jersey.
Yes.
Like, yes.
Yes, so northern
Okay.
New Jersey here. So I think Ed picked up, for some reason I could hear Ed most of the time. So I think he picked up the main answer about urgent action.
Mhm.
Which
Another
is, even if the case is exemplified. Can everybody hear me?
yeah.
Okay.
It's interrupted.
How about now? Is this better?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try and answer this quickly. So the thing is that these cases are also updated with the IS so that in many cases, things have changed from the original urgent action. And so by the time we get to Banned Books Week, it's an updated case with new actions. So it's a way of actually refreshing the urgent action cases too. That said, there are some cases which have never been urgent action cases that we've developed specifically through the work for Banned Books Week.
Ah,
So
That was particularly true with the Central American cases this year.
okay.
do you or AI ask for reporting what was done on these cases as they ask us? Or
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
so
we try to report on this for sure.
so that everybody who does something reports to some person who is an initiator of this whole banned books action. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Ed is more familiar with navigating the site than I am, and he can probably point out where the information about reporting would be.
Yeah, so if you take action online, and I really do, if you like this, particularly if you care about the people, obviously take action. But if you care about the Banned Book Week action in general, please do take action online and encourage a couple of friends or more of your group to do so, because obviously, you asked the question before, how much impact does it have? It takes staff time to put this together. And if we don't show impact, year over year, they're going to start to question whether or not, you know, whether it's worth investing the time in. But so if you take action online, the data is right there, and we do get reports on that. So I don't have the numbers offhand, but we actually know how many thousands of actions were taken last year online. I just don't have that number at my fingertips, and it was thousands, not tens of thousands. And then on the website, there are print petitions, and the Amnesty asks that you return the print copies to their office so they can tabulate them. But it also does give the opportunity to email a copy of the print petitions to each one of the case, you know, to the target of each one of the cases. So it's quite possible people will do print petitions and email them, and we'll never know.
Okay, thank you for clarification. Yeah, this is great. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was really, really good. Yeah, after we end the meeting, I'm going to immediately do the urgent actions. Absolutely. Yes.
So let me just also encourage people to tune into the event that we had.
Okay.
There's a recording available.
Okay.
And in the future, as ways of developing new connections with your local group, we have a lot of things where you can partner with bookstores and libraries.
Okay.
And we've been getting very good responses from bookstores and libraries. So that's something you could think about preparing for next year.
Okay.
Is there something to print out that we could bring to a bookstore or library?
Yeah, there's a whole
Online?
lot of resources.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll show one more time probably the 2 or 3 key things from that you could print out or take to a bookstore or library. So on the website, under print resources, there's things like the bookmarks, which you could print or bring to a printer. And next year, if you do this ahead of time, you can just request bookmarks. But I had these printed on cardstock at our printer at our school, and they come out, and I asked them to cut them, and they came out pretty good. There's your general flyer that would announce it and the cases and so forth. There are petitions if you wanted to go that route for each one of them, and they have the email address and a mailing address. And then probably the last thing that I'll point to 2 more things. Either in the toolkit for community events or post on social media, both of these have the case sheets that you can print and put in little stands that actually just are, you know, stand up and show an 8.5 by 11 page. And people can get that information and the QR code and actually go directly to those cases for information. Less relevant to you guys, although if you're going to a bookstore, they might be interested in it. If you click on the book list, these are books that relate to Amnesty cases. And so you can ask your bookstore to consider getting Ai Weiwei books next year, or Li Xiaobo books, or any Ken Saro-Wiwa going way back, or any of the other books that are on that list, and put them as part of the display for Banned Book Week. So there are quite a few resources that are there.
Thank you.
That's
Thanks
a
for
lot of
asking.
work. That's a lot of work they've done. That's an enormous amount of work. Oh,
We could probably use a couple more experts in the future. Like if you know anybody that does, I think childhood education, I'd love to see more kid-friendly action. The thing that's kid-friendly action, I don't know, is too kid-friendly right now. But you know, could there be coloring pages that are educational that are created? Could there be actions that are tailored to like fifth through 8th grade or 3rd through 8th grade? I don't know, because I don't teach those ages, right? If we had an artist on board, they could do more designing, graphic design, you know. So.
well, let's hope people watch this recording and get in touch with you. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I probably taken more time than
Oh,
was
no.
allotted, but then Ken came in and added
No.
more to our discussion.
No, that was great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks again. Thanks for inviting us. And if you have follow-up, my email's in the chat. And
Thank
hope-
you. It was totally new to me. Yeah.
awesome. Well, I'm glad you're interested and you got in touch with Edgar. So,
Thank you so much.
all right. I'm
Okay,
going to
well,
leave now. Enjoy
okay,
the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, we're going to continue with our regular Amnesty meeting then. So Dorothy and
Yeah.
me and Donna. Now we were talking about changing the day. That's what Dorothy wants to do.
Yeah.
Instead of Thursday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that Amara and Jessica can
From
participate.
Thursday.
They both have classes on Thursday night. And I think for the whole semester,